So starting the 2025 season and
Powered
very
by
well in
Riverside
the
FM.
possibly in the first game, as soon as Josh Allen scores a touchdown running, he will be in first place all alone as far as rushing TDs go. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL, the show that covers the NFL statistical leaders from the all-time greats to the current players leading the NFL. I'm your host, Ernie Jennings, and we're going to change things up a little bit with this episode of this podcast. And that is, instead of looking at the all-time leaders, whether it's career or single season or single games, we're going to be looking at individual teams. We're going to go through all 32 teams in the NFL, and that'll take us right up to the beginning of the 2025 season. So I figured I'd start in the AFC, then move over to the NFC. And starting with the AFC East, we'll go from there and work our way through until we get done. I also thought, well, the best way to do this is simply to go to the AFC East as where we're going to start, team that's in first place, and we'll just go down the list that way, which means that the first team I'm going to look at is the Buffalo Bills. They finished the year at 13-4 last year. They were 8-0 at home, 5-4 on the road, and 5-1 in their division. So how does this team stack up against the other Bills teams from the past? That's what we're going to find out in this episode of Just the Stats NFL. So we'll start with the coaches. Marv Levy has the most wins by a Buffalo Bills coach with 112. Sean McDermott second with 86. So give Sean McDermott 2 seasons of 13 wins apiece, and he ties Marv Levy, which I think is very possible since they had 13 wins this past season. And if he doesn't make that, he should make it the third season out. I don't see any reason he wouldn't unless he's not with the team. But looks like Sean McDermott at some point will pass Marv Levy as the coach with the most wins for the Buffalo Bills. Those two are the top by far. Lou Saban was third with 68. Chuck Knox way back with only 37. So those are the coaches. So let's shift over to the offense, and obviously we'll start with the quarterbacks. The quarterback who leads the Buffalo Bills in most yards is Jim Kelly with 35,467. He played for the Bills from 1986 to 1996. Joe Ferguson, who played before him, but from 1973 to 1984, he had 27,590 yards. And then Josh Allen's third with 26,434. So I'd say about a third of the way through the season at the most, Josh Allen's going to pass Joe Ferguson for second place on the all-time yardage list for the Buffalo Bills. Those are your top three, and then there's a huge drop down to the fourth quarterback. So we'll move over to TDs, passing TDs. And again, it's Jim Kelly, but he doesn't have the same type of lead that he on Josh Allen that he had before. So Jim Kelly had 237 touchdowns. Josh Allen has 195, and Joe Ferguson has 181. So probably 2 seasons. It's possible that Josh Allen could have a stellar season and throw 42 interceptions to tie him, but he's never done that in his career, so I'm kind of doubting he does. He only had 28 touchdown passes last year. That's Josh Allen, that is. So I don't expect him to catch Jim Kelly next year, but in 2026, for sure, he should pass him sometime during the season and become the all-time leader in touchdown passes. When it comes to interceptions, Josh Allen will never, most likely, be the leader in interceptions. And that's because, as I've said before, the way the NFL has dictated that they want the offense to be able to move up and down the field, which limits the ability of the defense. And you can see this in the percentage that passes are intercepted in the early years versus later years, and we'll see that right here. So Joe Ferguson from 1973 to 1984, had 190 receptions. Jim Kelly, 1986 to 1996, had 175. Josh Allen had 84. And when you look at the entire NFL, but the Buffalo Bills are a microcosm of this. Those years that Ferguson played, he threw interceptions at a rate of 4.6%. Jim Kelly, 3.7%. Josh Allen is down to 2.3%. And this just mirrors the NFL as a whole. The rules that they put in place have made it difficult for defenders to intercept a pass. And quarterbacks are better trained nowadays, but still, it's made it difficult. So when you look at the entire NFL, you'll see the passes intercepted rate drop every year for the last 40 years. It's just the way it is. But anyway, that's a record I don't see Josh Allen ever setting, which is a record he doesn't want to set in the first place. So just as well. So we move on to the last category for career-wise as far as quarterbacks go, and that's sacks. Jim Kelly had the most sacks for the Buffalo Bills with 323. And Joe Ferguson was second with 292. Josh Allen's third with 189. It's possible that he catches those two in his career if he stays with the Buffalo Bills, which I would think he would. But he's only being sacked at a 5% rate versus over 6% for Jim Kelly and Joe Ferguson. So he plays enough years, he could catch them, but he may not as far as being sacked. He got sacked more early in his career. This last season, he wasn't sacked but 14 times. So it's going to make it harder for him to ever get that high. But we will see. Moving from the quarterbacks to the running backs. And this is a record that I thought O.J. Simpson held, but he doesn't. Thurman Thomas, from 1988 to 1999, rushed for 11,938 yards for the Buffalo Bills. O.J. Simpson second with 10,183. Those are the top two, and there's nobody even close after that. As far as active players, James Cook has 2,638. So you see he's years and years away from those two, and that's if he's even playing for the Bills. And right now, we don't know what he's doing. We're waiting to see what happens with his contract situation. So we'll just have to continue to wait and see if he's even playing next year. But those are the top as far as that goes all time. When we're looking at TDs, it's a different story. Thurman Thomas is number one again, but he's tied with Josh Allen at 65 touchdowns running. So starting in the 2025 season and very well possibly in the first game, as soon as Josh Allen scores a touchdown running, he will be in first place all alone as far as rushing TDs go. O.J. Simpson was third with 57, and those are the top ones. James Cook has 20. He's at number 16 all time on the Buffalo Bills record as far as rushing TDs go. So those are your rushing leaders. Let's move on to the receiving core, see what they have. The player, and this is Andre Reed right across the board here as far as career records go, had 941 receptions. Eric Moulds, 675. And I should say Andre Reed in the same period with Thurman Thomas, Jim Kelly, 1985 to 1999. Had 941. Eric Moulds overlapped a little bit from 1996 to 2005. And then you had Thurman Thomas as a running back, led the Buffalo Bills in the third spot with 456. So he is the leading running back as far as receptions go. And then again, when it comes to receiving, there is nobody on the Buffalo Bills as far as receiving goes that's near the top. Dawson Knox is 18th. He has 193 receptions. That's the closest you've got. So it's going to be a while, years again, before any receiver, and it could very well not be any of the current ones. We'll see how these rookies, these young players they have going in their second, third year and so forth, how they produce. But right now, the way the offense is run, it's just going to be difficult for them to move up this list. When it comes to yards, again, Andre Reed has 13,095 yards. Big lead over Eric Moulds, who's second with 9,096. Those are your top two. And again, Thurman Thomas is number 7 as far as receiving yards with 4,341. The best tight end, now this is an area where you could see somebody from the current team possibly pass the tight end for most yards in a career. Pete Metzelaar from 1985 to 1994 had 2,921 yards receiving. This just tells you how little in the history of the Buffalo Bills they use the tight end. There's tight ends throughout the NFL that would be at the top of this list on their teams. You have tight ends for Kansas City, for example, and other teams that are well over 10,000 yards receiving as a tight end, and you just don't see them. And they have 1,000 plus receptions. You just don't see any of those. Nothing even close for the Buffalo Bills. So when you have Pete Metzelaar's with 2,921, you have Dawson Knox back with 2,277. Whether he's able to do it, I don't know. We might have to wait for Kincaid to move up this list. But I think one of those tight ends, and most likely Kincaid, if he can overcome his last year where he had a little bit of a slump compared to his rookie year, he's a tight end that could definitely pass Pete Metzelaar's for the most yards by a tight end and probably most receptions, most touchdowns, the whole caboodle. And speaking of that, let's look at touchdowns. Andre Reed had 86 touchdowns, by far the most by a Buffalo Bill receiver. Eric Moulds was second with 48. Stephon Diggs was moving up that list with 37, but then he's gone. So again, you've got Dawson Knox, number 13 with 23. And again, here's an area where he could catch Pete Metzelaar, the other tight end that's ahead of him, who only has 25. Dawson Knox gets 3 touchdown receptions. He passes Pete Metzelaar. So that's conceivable. 3, even if you don't catch a lot of passes during the season, you might just fluke right into 3 touchdown passes. So we'll see. Thurman Thomas has 22 touchdown receptions, which is pretty good. For a running back, he leads that team. And those are your leaders as far as career receiving. All right, let's look at a couple of defensive players. So we'll talk about interceptions first. And as I said about interceptions, this is an area where it may not be broken just because of the way the league is. But Butch Bird from 1964 to 1970 had 40 interceptions for the Buffalo Bills. Tony Green from 71 to 79 picked up right after him with 37. And then you go down the list into the one other player with 30. But the best player current, Jordan Poyer, who played with the Buffalo Bills from 2017 to 2023, had 22. As of last year, the best player was Matt Milano, had 10. He's had 10 interceptions for the Buffalo Bills in his career, which dates from 2017 to 2024. That's the best you've got as far as interceptions go. So I don't see anybody currently that's going to get up there. But you never know. 40 is a lot in the way the NFL is today, but it's not impossible. The record's 81 interceptions in a career, and that was also set way back in the past. But 40 is only half of that, so it's possible. Somebody has a good career, could do it. The last category we want to look at on a career level is tackles for loss. Kyle Williams leads the Buffalo Bills. He played from 2006 to 2018. He had 103 tackles for loss, the only Buffalo Bill with more than 100. Aaron Schobel was second with 98, came close. He played from 2001, 2009, So they had an overlap with Kyle Williams for about 3 years. So that might have been a good duo. The top current player, Matt Milano, as I said, who 2017 to 2024 has 59. So ways away. Ed Oliver, 2019 to 2024 has 49. And then Gregory Rousseau, also 24, has 46. So there's your top tackle for loss leaders. But as you can see, compared to interceptions, the players at the top of this list are much more current. So even that 103, I think over the years, and it'll be several years before anybody can break it, but I do believe somebody will break that tackle for loss record long before they ever break the interception record, if they ever break the interception record. All right. So let's look at the single season offensive records, and we'll start again with the quarterbacks. So this past year, Josh Allen had 3,731 yards, which puts him, as far as all-time Buffalo Bills, at number 8. But he does hold the top 4 out of 5 spots for the Buffalo Bills, including the top 2. In 2020, he did have 4,544 yards. That's his best. Then 2021, he had 4,407. The only thing that breaks up his top 5 is Drew Bledsoe, who came in at 3rd in 2002 with 4,359. So Drew Bledsoe held this record for 18 years before Josh Allen was able to break it. But those are the top leaders. Now, when you compare Josh Allen's best record of 4,544, or even this year where he only had 3,731, to what happened throughout the league this past year, Joe Burrow had 4,918 yards, which led the NFL in 2024 for passing yards. So he was at the top of the list. Josh Allen ended up finishing 14th among 2024 quarterbacks. So really not one of his better years. Now, when we're looking at TDs, again, Josh Allen holds 5 of the top 6. Jim Kelly in 4th place is the only interruption to that streak. But again, in 2020, Josh Allen had 37 touchdowns. 2021, 36. 2022, 35. Jim Kelly in 1991 had 33, followed again by Josh Allen, who last year only had 28. So Jim Kelly held this record for 29 years, quite a long time before Josh Allen came along to break it. So when you compare that to TDs in 2024 overall, Joe Burrow had 43 touchdown passes. Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson each had 41. And then Josh Allen comes in at number 8, tied with Aaron Rodgers with 28. So that's your touchdown leaders. A little bit of a drop-off for him. Now, obviously, Josh Allen scored in other ways. Now, when you look at interceptions, though, that's an area where Josh Allen excelled in not having. For the Buffalo Bills, he had only 6 interceptions last year. Jack Kemp holds the record twice. He had 26 interceptions in a season. And again, you'll never see that. You'll never see a quarterback have 26 interceptions. But Jack Kemp had 26 in 1967 and in 1964. So he holds the record with Dennis Shaw, who in 1971 also had 26. It's not really a current player. Josh Allen had 18 in 2023. That's the most he's ever had. But then, so 2023, he had 18. Last year, he has 6. Quite a difference, quite an improvement. He went from throwing interceptions at a 3.1% rate to a 1.2% rate. That's a huge drop-off. It's good for him. It's one of the reasons they had the wins, the amount of wins they did have. But in the league last year, Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins, who didn't even play the last 3 games, each had 16. So they led the league with Geno Smith at 15 And then, like I said, Josh Allen only had 6. So good year for him. So when we look at sacks, the other category, last category for quarterbacks, Josh Allen was sacked 14 times last year, which is way under some of the numbers he's had in the past. But Drew Bledsoe holds the record for the Buffalo Bills. In 2002, he was sacked 54 times, and in 2003, he was sacked 49 times. So he holds a record for that. Not a record you like to have, but it is one he holds. Whereas Josh Allen's worst year, he had 38 sacks in 2019. That was his worst year. And as you can tell, he's dropped that dramatically. He's down to only 14 last year. So big improvement for him. Now, when you're looking at the NFL as a whole, now remember, it's not funny, really. If you're Caleb Williams, it's not funny. So Josh Allen had 14 sacks. Caleb Williams had 68. 68 times he was sacked for 466 yards. That's an astounding amount of sacks and yards lost. CJ Stroud was second with 52 sacks. So that's impressive, only having 14 sacks and playing every game. So good for Josh Allen when it comes to that category. All right. Let's move to the running game. Look at the single season rushing records. So as far as yards go, James Cook last year had 1,009 yards. The record's held by O.J. Simpson, who has 2,003, which he did in 1973. O.J. Simpson holds the top 3 spots. 1975, he had 1,817, and then in 1976, he had 1,503. And remember, this is in 14 games, so it's incredible. Thurman Thomas comes in 4th at 16 games, but he had 1,487. So James Cook, with his 1,009, is only able to finish at number 31 on the Buffalo Bills all-time record. Now, when you look at throughout the entire NFL, Saquon Barkley had 2,005 yards, which is almost double James Cook. He led the league, Saquon Barkley did last year. Huge difference compared to James Cook. Josh Allen, second. Last year, he had 531 yards, which is more than Ray Davis, who had 442. I think you're going to see that change. I can't believe Josh Allen's going to be the second leading rusher on his team again next year, but he could. It's not inconceivable. It really depends on what happens with James Cook. So we'll see. Now, when it comes to touchdowns, James Cook did much better. He had 16 touchdowns, which tied the league lead with Jamar Gibbs and Derrick Henry, who also both had 16 touchdowns. And then Josh Jacobs had 15. So the 16 touchdowns is impressive. And that ties O.J. Simpson for the most touchdowns in a single season. So O.J. Simpson in 1975, and again, 14 games, had 16 touchdowns. Those two are tied. Josh Allen in 2023 had 15. So O.J. Simpson's held this record for 50 years. And obviously, I think it'll be broken at some point. They're coming close. Twice now in the last 2 years, they've come very close to breaking his record. But that's a record I think will be broken, especially now you have 17 games to do it. And, you know, it's just the way it goes as far as that, some of these numbers. All right, let's look at receiving records. Khalil Shakir had 76 receptions. The leader by far in receptions is Stephon Diggs. He's got the top 4 years he owns those. So in 2020, he had 127 receptions. 2022, 108. 2023, 107. And in 2021, he had 103. The only other player for the Buffalo Bills to have 100 even is Eric Moulds, had 100 exactly in 2002. So he held that record for 18 years until Stephon Diggs came along and broke it. Like I said, Khalil Shakir had 76, so quite a distance away. Now, as far as receptions last year in the NFL, Jamar Chase had 127, which would have tied Stephon Diggs for the all-time record if he was a Buffalo Bill, which he's not. But he had 127. He led the league. Malik Neighbors had 109. And then, but actually, when you look at it, he had 109. But actually, Amon St. Brown for Detroit Lions had 115. He was actually second. And then Brock Bowers, as a tight end, had 112. Trey McBride, another tight end, had 111. So Malik Neighbors was number 5 with 109. Those are your leading receivers. So no Buffalo Bills anywhere near the top 30 as far as that goes. Actually, I'm wrong on that. Khalil Shakir does sneak in at number 27 with his 76 receptions. Now looking at receiving yards, again, Khalil Shakir had 821. Not very many. And when you look at that compared to the history of the Buffalo Bills, again, Stephon Diggs only holds the top 2 spots, and then Eric Moulds has the next 2. And I'll show you why in a minute here, or tell you why. But Stephon Diggs in 2020 had 1,535 yards. In 2022, he had 1,429. But to get to that 1,535 in 2020, he had to have 127 receptions to do it, which averaged out to 12.1 yards per reception. Eric Moulds in 1998, who's in the number 3 spot, had 1,368 yards on only 67 receptions, but he averaged 20.4 yards a reception. That's an incredible amount of receptions per yard. Receptions, yards per reception, I should say. I'll get that straight. Those are your top players. Now, when you look at the 2024 season, Jamar Chase led the league again with 1,708. Justin Jefferson was second with 1,533. Those two are by far the leaders. Brian Thomas for the Jaguars as a rookie had 1,282. He came in third. But as you can tell, if you remember that Shakir had 821, Jamar Chase had more than double him as far as reception yards. Now, when we look at TDs, this is interesting as far as last year goes. You wouldn't have thought this, but Mac Hollins had 5 TDs. Shakir and Coleman each had 4. So those are your leading receivers as far as touchdowns go. The record for the Buffalo Bills is held by Stephon Diggs and Bill Brooks. Stephon Diggs in 2022 had 11 TDs, and Bill Brooks in 1995 had 11. So Bill Brooks has hung on to this record for 30 years, and obviously he's hoping he hangs on to it, I guess, or he may not care. But he did have 11 touchdown receptions. Last year, again, Jamar Chase, who had the Triple Crown as far as receiving goes, had 17 touchdown receptions. That was the most, followed by Terry McLaurin with 13. So obviously, when you only have 5 for your team and you led the team with only 5, you're tied for 50th place in the NFL last year as far as that goes. As we wrap it up on the Buffalo Bills, I do have to say that obviously there are dozens of stats that I could cover, but time just doesn't permit it. But the good thing is that during the season, I will mention a record that's broken regardless of whether I've covered it as a stat during the Team Records podcast. During the season, I'll mention any records that are broken. And when it comes to career records, all-time records, even a significant move up the list, like into the top 10 or something, I'll mention, because career records, they're difficult. So somebody that's moving up, if there is any Buffalo Bills, I will mention that. So that'll be things that happen during the season when I'm coming to you talking about the games as they were played and what records might have been broken or close to being broken during a particular game of that season. So the next podcast will cover the second place team in the AFC division. That's the Miami Dolphins. So I look forward to sharing that information with you. Please subscribe. That really helps grow the podcast, and add a 5-star rating. That would be greatly appreciated. I do thank you for listening. And that's a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL. So until next time, juice.